Lesson 10, I will round numbers to any place value using real-world number problems. So today we're going to be talking about rounding numbers to any place value. In your Zern lesson, you were using rounding to solve some real-world problems about the White House and about school. Well, in this lesson, we're going to do a little bit of that too, but before we get to the real-world application problems, we're going to practice rounding some numbers without using the vertical number line. Now, the vertical number line is very important. It helps you visualize exactly what's happening when you are rounding. But eventually, after you've used it for a while, you may not need it. Now, if you're not to that place yet and you still need to draw the vertical number line, draw it as long as you need it. But in this lesson, I'm going to assume that you're getting to the point to where you don't always need that vertical number line. So if I ask you to do a problem by yourself and you need that vertical number line, please go ahead and draw it. Okay, so let's take a look at number 1. It says round 543,982 to the nearest thousand. So I'm looking at the thousands place. So there are 543 thousands in this number. So it comes between 543,000 and 544,000 on the number line. Now, would this be more or less than halfway? It would be more than halfway, so it would round to 544,000. Again, if that didn't make sense to you, you could always come over and draw your vertical number line. All right, so now let's round this to the nearest 10,000. Okay, so I'm looking at the 10,000s place, and I see a 4. So there are 54 10,000s in this number. So that means that this number comes between 54 10,000 and 55 10,000. So would this be more or less than halfway? Well, it would be less than halfway, so I would round down to 54 10,000s. So remember, this is how you write 54 10,000s. And then I always think that the 100,000s is going to be the easiest because it's the greatest value. All right, so there are 500,000s, so this number comes between 500,000 and 600,000. Would this be more or less than halfway? Well, the 4 tells me it's less than halfway, so this would be 500,000. Okay, let's try number 2. So we're going to complete each statement by rounding the number to the given place value. So we have 2,841 rounded to the nearest hundred. So I'm looking at the hundreds place, and there's an 8 here. So this number comes between 2,800s and 2,900s. Would it be more or less than halfway? Well, the 4 tells me it would be less than halfway. So this is 2,800 or 28 hundredths. So now we're going to try to round 32,851 to the nearest hundred. Okay, so I have 328 hundredths. So it comes between 328 and 329. Would this be more or less than halfway? Well, the 5 tells me it would be more than halfway, so I round up to 329 hundredths, which is 32,900. Why don't you try C by yourself, pause the video, and then come back and let's talk about it. Okay, so for 132,891 to the nearest hundred, so when I find that the 8 is in the hundreds place, I see that there are 1,328 hundredths in this number. So this comes between 1,328 hundredths and 1,329 hundredths. Well, this 9 tells me that it's going to be closer to 1,329 hundredths. And this is what 1,329 hundredths looks like. If you needed to come over here and draw a vertical number line to do that, that is perfectly acceptable. Whenever you're rounding with this many digits in front of the place that you're rounding to, it can sometimes get confusing. I want you to go ahead and try D and E by yourself. D will be easier than E, but I think that you can do both of them. Again, if you get stuck and can't do it without the vertical number line, come over here in the margin and draw the vertical number line so that you can understand what's going on in my head. And once you can figure this out in your head, you won't need the vertical number line. But until then, draw it. It doesn't take very long. So pause the video and try both of those problems by yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at D. So there are 6,000s and 6,299. So this number comes between 6,000 and 7,000. Well, the 2 tells me that it's less than halfway to 7,000, so that means that it rounds down to 6,000. Now E has 36,000s, so it comes between 36,000 and 37,000. The 5 tells me it's closer to 37,000. Okay, let's take a look at F. So F will be just a little bit trickier just because there's more digits. That's the only difference. So there are 100 thousands in this number. So it comes between 100,000 and 101,000. Now when I look at this 6, this tells me that 100,699 is more than halfway, so it rounds up to 101,000. All right, I want you to do G by yourself because we're rounding to the nearest 10,000, and I think when you round to the greatest place, that makes it a little bit easier. So pause the video and try to do that one, then come back. Okay, so for G, 40,984 has 4 10,000s. So this is going to come between 4 10,000s and 5 10,000s. So when I see this 0 next to it, that tells me that 40,984 would be less than halfway, so it would round to 40,000. Okay? Again, if it doesn't make sense what I'm saying to you, you can always look at a vertical number line. So like take this vertical number line for example. I said that it was between 40,000 and 50,000, or 4 10,000s and 5 10,000s. My halfway point was 45,000. Well, 40,000 is less than halfway, so it rounds to 40,000. So I'm still doing a vertical number line, I'm just doing it in my head. And if you're not to that place, draw it. It took me less than a half a minute to draw that vertical number line. All right, let's take a look at H, I, J, K, and L. Okay, I would like for you to do all 5 of these by yourself. And if you need to draw a vertical number line on a separate piece of paper or on this paper, I want you to do that. And then we're going to come back and check all 5 of them together. Okay, let's take a look at H. So we're rounding to the nearest 10,000. So H has 5 10,000s. So that means that this number comes between 5 10,000s and 6 10,000s. The 4 tells me that it's less than halfway. So this number is going to round to 5 10,000s, which is 50,000. Let's look at I. So I has 99 10,000s. So it comes between 99 10,000 and 10 10,000s. So this 7 tells me that it's going to round up to 10 10,000s, which would be not 100,000, which is what I wrote. Oops. 10 10,000s would look like this. How do you read that? 1 million. All right, let's take a look at J. So now we're rounding to the nearest 100,000. So this has 300,000s, and it would be between 300,000 and 400,000. The 6 tells me that it's going to round up to 400,000, which would be this. For K, this is between 400,000 and 500,000. The 3 tells me it's less than halfway, so it rounds down to 400,000. And last, L has 800,000s, so it's between 800 and 900,000. The 5 tells me it's more than halfway, so it rounds up to 900,000. Again, if you're not able to do this in your head yet, that is okay. But please take the time to draw the vertical number line and don't try to guess. That's silly. If you draw the vertical number line, you're going to get it right. If you guess, you might get it wrong. The more vertical number lines you draw, the easier it's going to be for you to do it in your head eventually. But if you try to do it in your head too soon, you might get it wrong. All right, let's take a look at number 3. So we're going to use that RDWW process. We're going to read, we're going to draw, we're going to write a number sentence, and we're going to write a word sentence. So first, let's read. Empire Elementary School needs to purchase water bottles for field day. There are 2,142 students. Principal Vader rounded to the nearest 100 to estimate how many water bottles to order. Will there be enough water bottles for everyone? So I'm thinking to myself, what can I draw? I want to represent that there are this many students and that Principal Vader rounded to the nearest 100. So I'm going to take this number, 2,142, and I'm going to round it to the nearest 100. So I'm going to draw a vertical number line to show my thinking, okay? Not because I need this vertical number line to round, but I want to show my thinking. That's very important when I'm solving an application problem. So how many hundreds are in this number? Well, I see 21. So there are 21 hundreds. One more hundred would be 22 hundreds. My halfway point would be 2,150. Okay, because halfway between 100 and 200 would be 150, and my 2,000 stays the same. So let's take a look at our number. Is this more or less than halfway? Well, it's less than halfway because 2,142 is here, so this number is going to round to 2,100. So we have 2,142 students, and that rounds to about 2,100. So if Principal Vader rounded this number to 2,100 and he bought 2,100 water bottles, will there be enough water bottles for everyone? Well, the answer is no, because look, he's still going to have 42 kids that don't have water bottles. So we wrote our number sentence. Now we're going to answer the question. And will there be enough water bottles for everyone? No, there are 2,142 students and Principal Vader, I guess that's how you say his name, only ordered 2,100 water bottles. So there are some times in the real world that you have to be careful what you estimate to, because those 42 kids wouldn't be happy if they didn't get a water bottle. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So again, we're going to read, draw, write a number sentence, and write a word sentence. Opening day at the New York State Fair in 2012 had an attendance of 46,753. Decide which place value to round 46,753 if you are writing a newspaper article. Round the number and explain why it is an appropriate unit to round the attendance to. Okay, so let's think about this. I'm writing an article for a newspaper. So in the last question, I was rounding because I needed to have enough water bottles for everybody. But what's the purpose of writing a newspaper article? I'm just sharing information, right? So would it make a difference if I rounded it down or if I rounded it up? If my newspaper article estimate showed less people, would it make a difference? It wouldn't, right? It wouldn't make a difference. So really, it doesn't really matter what I round to here. There's not really a wrong answer because no one's going to be left without a water bottle in this case because I'm only rounding to give information. So in this case, I think I'm going to round to the 10,000s place because that would be easier. And whenever I'm writing a number or I'm writing a story, sometimes I like to make my numbers nice and even because they're easier to read. So the largest place value in this number is the 10,000s place. So I'm going to round to the 10,000. So I'm going to draw this vertical number line just to show my thinking. There are 4 10,000s. So that means that this number would come between 4 10,000s and 5 10,000s. My halfway point would be 45,000. Is this number more or less than halfway? What is more than halfway? So 46,753 is about 50,000. Now, if I chose to round to the thousands place, then this number would have been 47,000. That would have been a nice even number to quote in a newspaper article too. So that would have also been correct. And I could have rounded to the hundreds. It doesn't really matter when you're just quoting for a newspaper article. You're just trying to make it sound nice in your writing. Okay, so I read, I drew a vertical number line, I wrote a number sentence. Now I'm going to have to answer the question and explain why it's an appropriate unit. So I'm going to say that there were about 50,000 people at the fair. I think that would be lowercase since I didn't name the particular fair, okay? I rounded to the 10,000s place because, oops, that doesn't look nice, does it? I rounded to the 10,000s place because for an article, I did not need an accurate estimate. And when I say accurate, I don't mean that it's not accurate. I mean that it's not as close to the original number. Like if I rounded to the nearest tens place, I would have said there were 46,750 people there. This is more accurate because it's closer to the original number. So when I say not accurate, I don't mean that that's not an accurate estimate. I just mean it's not as close to the actual answer as if I would have rounded to a smaller place. All right, let's take a look at number 5. So again, we're going to read, we're going to draw, we're going to write a number sentence, and we're going to write a word sentence. A jet airplane holds about 65,000 gallons of gas. It uses about 7,460 gallons when flying between New York and Los Angeles. Round each number to the largest place value. Then find out about how many trips the plane can take between cities before running out of fuel. Okay, so we're going to round each number to the largest place value. So I've got two numbers here. I've got 65,000 and I've got 7,460. So this time I'm not going to draw a vertical number line because I'm going to draw something else I'm going to show you. So 65,000, what's the largest place here? That would be the 10,000s. So this comes between 6 and 7,000s. The 5 tells me that it's greater than halfway. So this would round to 7 10,000s. And then I've got 7,460. So if I round it to the greatest place value, that would be the thousands. So it comes between 7,000 and 8,000s. The 4 tells me it's less than halfway, so that's 7,000. So now, I really need to draw my picture to figure out how many times that this airplane can fly between New York and Los Angeles. So I basically have a total of 7 10,000s or 70,000 gallons of gas. So I'm going to draw this tape diagram. I have 70,000 gallons of gas. And every time I make a trip, I'm going to use 7,000 gallons. So I want to know how many 7,000s I can get out of 70,000. So I'm basically asking this number sentence. 7,000 times what equals 70,000? Or how many times does 7,000 go into 70,000? So I could count by sevens, right? I could say 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, 70. So how many 7,000s was that? That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, I should know that. I should know that 7,000 times 10 is 70,000 because when you look at a place value chart, And you don't have to draw this place value chart, I'm just showing you. But if I had ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s, if I'm in the 7,000s and I want to move it to the 10,000s, what did I do to 7? I multiplied it times 10. Duh, I should have known that, right? So now I have to answer the question. The question is, how many trips can the plane take between cities before running out of fuel? Well, the answer is the plane can take 10 trips. Okay, and I could finish that before running out of fuel, but that's okay if I just say the plane can take 10 trips. So today was all about rounding to any place value again, and we practiced doing that some without a vertical number line. But remember, if you still need the vertical number line, please take the extra time to draw it. It's really fast. It doesn't take that much time. And we also learned that when you are estimating, it sometimes does matter what you round to. It depends on what you're using the number for. Like if you're buying water bottles, you need to make sure that when you round, you're not rounding down because you're not going to have enough for everybody. And like if you're talking about gas or fuel, notice that this number rounded up, but this number rounded down. So you would have to be really careful here because if I were flying that airplane, I might not be able to make a whole total 10 trips. This is just an estimate where you can take about 10 trips. Okay, so sometimes it does matter what you're estimating to.